George goes to the zoo. This is George. George is a good little monkey and always very curious. Today George was feeling very excited. The man with the yellow hat was taking him to the zoo. As they drove, the man explained to George that this wasn't any zoo they were going to visit. It was called the Wild Animal Park, the man said. All the animals roam around freely. When they arrived, George saw a huge banner. George looked up at it, but he could not read the words. A friendly zookeeper explained it's an extra special day here at the Wild Animal Park, she said. It's our baby Rhino's first birthday. We are going to have a party for her later on. A party, this was going to be a wonderful trip to the zoo. George tried to walk into the park where the animals were, but the zookeeper stopped him. You can't walk in there, he said. To explore this zoo, you have to ride on one of our special cars. She pointed to a huge car that had no roof on it. Oh my, what fun this was going to be! George and his friend climbed on board and the car drove into the park. Soon they were in the midst of... Look over there! There's our pride of lions. We have a large family here. George pointed in the other direction. Yes, George, said the zookeeper. I see giraffes too. Their tall necks help them eat leaves from the treetops. There are ostriches running this way. George was happy to be seeing so many amazing animals. The zoo car drove past a small pond. Pink flamingos paddled in the water. Their heads bobbed up and down as they walked on spindly legs. The flamingos turned pink because they eat so many tiny pink shrimp, said the zookeeper, but George was not listening. He had never seen a flamingo before. He was curious about how those flamingos were moving. He leaned to the back of the zoo car as far as he could to take a look. But then, what happened? First, George lost his balance, then he fell, kerplunk, right out of the zoo car. His friend hasn't noticed anything that he had fallen. George ran as quickly as little monkey could toward the pond. The flamingos bobbed their heads and lifted their feet one at a time. It looked like they were dancing. George danced with them. Suddenly the water in the pond started to move. Then a hippo popped its head out of the water. What a surprise! George stopped dancing to take a look. The hippo opened his huge mouth as if it were yawning. George opened his mouth wide too. It was fun to act like the hippo. Just then George noticed that something was rustling in the reeds near the pond. George was curious. He wanted to see what was there. In an instant, he jumped over to the reeds and poked his nose inside and saw a baby rhino. The tiny rhino was cute, but he looked a little bit sad and a bit lonely. George wanted to make that baby rhino feel happy again. He thought and thought. Maybe the baby rhino would like a flamingo dance. He jumped and bobbed his head up and down and danced his feet up and down. The baby rhino peeked his head out of the reeds so that she could watch. George danced more and the rhino walked out of the reeds. She was curious too. They was having so much fun that George didn't notice what was behind him. The zookeeper stomped over to George. She did not look happy. The man with the yellow hat was running behind her. You are a little monkey, said the zookeeper. "You are supposed to stay in the car. You and your friend will have to go now." George walked to the man's side. He waved goodbye to the baby rhino. The man and the zookeeper turned to see whom George was waving to. The baby rhino. "Why, we've been looking for her all day," said the zookeeper. "She got separated from her mother." George was glad to see the zookeeper looking happy again. She and the man started to walk towards the exit. "Thank you for finding our baby," but then the zookeeper ran to stop them. "Thank you for finding our baby rhino, George, and just in time for her birthday party. Will you join us for some cake?" George jumped with glee. He had forgotten about the party, and he did love cake. The man and George followed the zookeeper and the baby rhino back to the zoo headquarters. The rhino's mother was waiting for her there. The zookeeper brought out a special birthday cake that was shaped like a rhino. George had never seen a cake like that before. "You can have the first piece, George," said the zookeeper. "I also have a special treat just for you." She placed a bunch of bananas in front of him. George was happy to have a tasty banana, but he saved some room for cake